almost every aspect of the work I both can enjoy and can absolutely dread. There's also a huge value to like being willing to be uncomfortable. Your passion could just be like enjoying your life. I think you can have purpose in your work without it necessarily being a passion. Sometimes it's hard to be resourceful and creative with like more money thrown at you. Whoa. Hi, sweetie pies. You are listening to Not For Everyone, a podcast hosted by a hater and a lover. Today, it's just the hater here. We're doing a hater hour, and I've decided to talk about something, a popular request from listeners of the podcast. People have expressed a lot of interest in hearing more discussion around pursuing your passion, your purpose in life. Things like when to turn your creative hobby or side hustle into a full-time gig, whether you should, things like that. I think the conversation applies to almost everybody in terms of like weighing pros and cons, trying to take strategic risk in your life, trying to figure out the balance of pursuing fulfillment versus enduring discomfort. This applies to relationships, personal relationships, work, hobbies, family, love, all kinds of things. I love talking about the topic of fulfillment, risk, sacrifice, strategic risk, willing to be uncomfortable. Maybe I know a lot of listeners to the pod are currently trying to navigate this decision, or maybe it's somebody you know who's trying to figure out whether or not they should make a career switch, whether they should start investing in that passion project. So if there's somebody that you need to send this to, this is a gift to them. And for that reason, in case there are some newcomers to the podcast, I'm going to give a little bit of background information about my career paths, just a high level. So pardon me if you're very familiar with this tale, but I'm just going to do a quick little recap before we dive into the rest of it. Before I give you my personal career trajectories, background, ups and downs, I've had a lot of ups, a lot of downs. I've pursued passion, purpose, experienced failure from a bunch of different angles. And I'm not an expert on the topic, but I do feel like I've lived a lot of lives in this arena and experienced trying this a bunch of different ways. So I really love talking about it. And before we get into that, I just want to touch on the idea of passion. Just passion. I don't necessarily love the idea of like, I gotta pursue my passion. Everyone has to pursue their passion. Because it makes it sound like we all have to be like creative entrepreneurs and self-employed. And in that case, like, who's working in the hospitals? Like, who's cleaning up the streets? Like, I think you can have purpose in your work without it necessarily being a passion. And I don't know that pursuing a passion always serves everybody. Because the important thing to know is that passion does fade. No matter what you pursue, if you love it, the passion eventually evolves. I think similar to a romantic relationship. People say that like limerence, infatuation phase of love, it transforms for most relationships, even amazing relationships that you admire. It transforms and it becomes something different long term. And even if you have the most like glitzy, romanticized job in the world, it does eventually become a job that you have to make yourself get up for and make yourself work hard at and, summon discipline over. I personally think I have one of the most amazing jobs in the world. I support myself full-time making YouTube videos. Oh my God, shoot me. Like, how dare I live this life? It's a ridiculous luxury. And it is still 100% a job. It's definitely better than a lot of jobs I've had in the past. But, ask me how I feel about my job. And I would say, I absolutely love it. I can't believe I get to do this. I love it. Macro level, I love it. Day to day, I hardly ever want to do it. So many days I wake up, no, I don't want to be on camera right now. No, I'm depressed. I don't want to be on camera for 8 hours, trying to summon an energy I don't have. No, I don't want to edit my own face for 30 hours straight this week. No, I don't want to come up with one more creative idea when all I really feel like is sulking or just like coasting. I have to come up with a new idea this week. It's still a job. It's an amazing job. And I think you will hear this from any single person, even those who absolutely love their career, absolutely love the business they built. Even people who started on passion and still have passion in their job, passion does not sustain you. No matter what, it's going to involve discipline. So if you're the person who, my call out is just to say that passion alone does not necessarily mean that you're going to love that activity when it's full time. If you just love making like beautiful, ornate, handmade, custom cakes, and you make them like for everyone's birthday, outside of your office job, whenever it's someone's birthday or a special event, you always make them this beautiful cake and you love it so much. That's passion. That's amazing. Sounds like you also have talent, but that experience is going to feel very different when you are making 5, 10, 20 cakes a day. You're staying up till 2 a.m. and you're working 7 days a week for the first year or two. Passion isn't going to sustain you through that. It's going to look very different when you're working full time. So passion is a great start, but just know that I think you have to do a little bit of testing out. Like, I like this activity on its own. Am I also going to like it when I have to do it till 2 a.m. every night, 7 days a week, which is usually what happens for almost anything when you're pursuing like starting your own business or something like that, or doing something innovative and new. So I think there's a little bit of testing. I think that's the one thing. I don't mean to be a Debbie Downer, because I think it's actually a helpful thing. There's lots of things I have passion for that I want to keep as a passion. I want to keep as a hobby. I think I would hate it. I would kill the passion if I try to make it my full-time job. But there is room to like test out your passions. See if you can make them long-lasting. See how they feel and how you relate to them when it's a more constant, everyday kind of grind. There's a way to test that out. And maybe you don't end up pursuing the initial passion that you thought you would want to pursue, but there could be something else. On the note of passion, one of our listeners wrote in and wrote something that really made me laugh. This is a fellow hater for sure. And this person wrote in and said, "Stop asking me my passion. I don't fucking know because I don't have time to cultivate hobbies. Maybe not everyone even has one." And I don't know if they're specifically yelling at me. They could be. I'm not, first of all, let me be clear. I'm not saying everyone needs to pursue their passions at all. I just know it's a topic that listeners do want to hear about. So if this listener is yelling at me, I honestly agree. I agree. Not everybody needs to have a passion, and not everybody needs to do a passion for their job, for their livelihood. Your passion can be your relationships. Your passion could be your family. Your passion could be jet setting as a wealthy, single, independent, unmarried, fabulous cat woman. What is it called? Cat lady? Whatever. Or your passion could just be like living an amazing life. Like, why does there have to be a second hobby attached to just like, I have a life, I'm alive on earth and I want it to be nice. So I completely agree with this listener. Not everybody needs to have a passion. I think a lot of the times you hear people who have gotten really lucky with a passion career. These are the kinds of people who like give, not valedictorian, but like commencement speeches and stuff. And they give like an inspirational commencement speech and they tell everybody else to follow their passions. And I sometimes want to yell at them and be like, yo, that's like the lottery winner telling everyone to buy a lottery ticket. Like, you had a very special, magical experience. Your life and your livelihood is special and magical because a lot of people don't get to do this. Like, the lottery win was big because there's only one. If everybody got winning numbers in the lottery, it wouldn't be such a big deal. Like, I think a lot of the passion advice comes from people who already made it to the top. So if someone's preaching to you about passion, find your passion, do your this, just feel free to tell them to shut up. Feel free to ignore them. Your passion could just be like enjoying your life. I think that is plenty. However, if you are interested in this topic of like maybe converting your creative career, your side hustle to your full-time gig, should I quit my 9-to-5? I can talk about that. Here are my opinions. Because another listener wrote in and said, should I quit my 9-to-5 and pursue content creation? I already create content as a hobby. Okay, so content creation aside, should I quit my 9-to-5 and pursue my hobby? I think there are a lot of factors that go into that. And I think there's a balance. There's a balance of like prepping and strategizing, investing, testing things out. And then also, I think there's a part that's like taking that leap of faith and following the thing that energetically feels correct. I think it's both. I don't think it's just one or the other. And I think like, well, let's talk about it. So for anybody who is new listening to this episode, is not familiar, a little bit of my background in pursuing the creative was that I was an actor in my first career. I was did casual acting stuff as a kid my whole life, knew I wanted to go to college for theater. And then after theater, pursued acting theoretically professionally in New York for many years. It did not pan out for me. And around the age of 28, I think, I decided to call it quits because I was just so massively, massively unhappy. But I gave it, a good 8 years or so. After that, I had absolutely no idea what I was supposed to do next. Since the age of 11, all I had known, I didn't know a lot, but I knew that I wanted to be an actor. I could not think of a single other thing on earth I was good at or cared about or could even tolerate. Frankly, I wasn't even thinking of going into another passion career at that point. I was so depleted. I was so tired of living off of waitressing money and babysitting money and $30,000 a year and not having health insurance and not being able to pay rent and not being able to go out and working 10 gig jobs to support the day job. I didn't want to go into another passion. I was completely burned out and I didn't know what I would go into anyway. Eventually, I stumbled across coding, computer coding, and I decided to do like a coding boot camp. Because I knew it was a super stable career that could support me well, bring me stability. The job market was good, and I didn't have to go get a super expensive, fancy degree to do it, which was important to me. I didn't want a lot of debt, and I did enjoy some aspect of it. There's like a puzzle solving aspect, like a sort of math adjacent aspect to it that I liked, and it felt refreshing coming from the nebulous world of acting that I'd come from. And going into coding, I did that for about 4 years. And my intention was to do it for the rest of, like, make a career out of it, do it for the rest of my life. My intention was not to use my temporary coding career. It wasn't supposed to be temporary. It wasn't supposed to be just like a transitional period until I pivoted to the next creative thing. I was in it for the long haul. But what ended up happening somewhere in those 4 years, actually a lot faster than that, within a few months, I was like, wow, I want to die. Wow, I have no reason to live. Wow, I cannot even tolerate walking into this office. And there were some surrounding circumstances that made my life pretty depressing at that time. But pretty quickly, I was all at once grateful for the stability, grateful for a salary, grateful for benefits, and pretty antsy to get back to doing something more creative. But I still don't consider this coding period any kind of waste, because what it ended up being was the kind of ruminating, marinating, simmering time I needed to figure out something else I was interested in. I didn't have any savings when I quit acting. I didn't have a trust fund. I didn't have parents who were going to throw me tons of money to, just sit around and figure it out for a few years. I needed to have income, and I needed a job that was not energetically taxing so that I could have the time and space to figure out what I actually wanted to follow next. I think having a kind of 9-to-5 job like this that I could check in, I could check out, there was ease, there was no stress because I knew I had a salary, it was stable. And those 4 years were really, really completely necessary for me to ever discover, oh, I kind of like interior design, or I kind of like making YouTube videos, or whatever else. It took me about 4 years of simmering before I even realized, oh, I'm watching like a lot of YouTube. I'm watching a lot of design stuff. And it was a funny moment because to realize I was loving YouTube, DIY, interior design, because I've actually done crafts obsessively my entire life. It was this thing that I've done for fun my entire life, gotten completely absorbed into them. In so many family photos where like all of my siblings and family are posed and I'm like 4 years old, I'm sitting with a drawing pad on my lap, ignoring the camera. At any family event, I was in a corner doing a craft. Like, it was never to show anyone the craft it was never a performative thing. It's just like I would completely lose my soul and mind in doing a craft. I always loved this thing, and building forts and decorating little cubby nooks in our home and trying to make little magical worlds for my siblings. It was something that I always did and loved doing, but I never noticed it. I never saw it. It was just this thing I'd always loved. And it never occurred to me that I could turn this into, a livelihood until, I was like 30 something. So it could be helpful to reflect on like, what are the things you've always loved doing? And actually, to my sister Elizabeth's credit, I remember when I was quitting acting, she sat with me and had this brainstorm, and she was like, well, what are the things you've always loved? You've always been a crafter. And I like wrote her off. I was like, yeah, but you can't make money doing that. Like, I need a stable career. And, it took me about 4 years to come back to it. But if you are one of those people who is sitting there thinking like, I have more energy and more creativity to give to either a side hustle, maybe a full-time job, what could it be? Just think about those things you've always loved doing that you do no matter what, even if no one was paying you. And if you're really good at it, if you also have talent at it, find a way to have someone pay you to do it. And then see if the passion fades once it's obligatory. Does the passion fade once you're doing it for money? Does the passion fade once you have to do it, 40 hours a week, or most likely more than that? Or does the passion just adjust and it's still enjoyable in some other way? And I think, a personal opinion, I think one of the most winning combos you can have as an entrepreneur or a creatively employed person is to have 2 random skills, specifically 2 random talents that are usually not connected. And you don't have to be the best in the world at either of those skills, but just as long as you are very good at both of them, I think you can do magical things. Personally, I think my talent, for people who are new here again, I eventually transitioned. I slowly started making YouTube DIY interior design videos. Those took off. I kind of tested the theory of doing this professionally. And once I'd evaluated, gained enough momentum, tested the career enough, I eventually quit my tech job and went full-time into that. That's what I do full-time now. And I'm going to talk about that transition, the decisions I made, how I evaluated it, things I set up. I'm going to talk about all that in detail. But first, I just want to talk about this, like having 2 weird talents, 2 seemingly unrelated talents or skills. For me personally, I think some of the assets that have made me successful in what I do is that I bring 2 disparate skills together, which is like, yes, I'm pretty good at interior design. I am not the best. I am not a prodigy. I am not a genius. I'm not going to be in the history books of interior design. No, I am not. But I'm pretty good. And in addition, I am a good storyteller. I think I'm a good storyteller. I think that includes like humor, emotional reflection, the arc of narration, being able to explain ideas to people, being able to explain even interior design concepts to people. I'm like a good explainer for the most part. I'm not the best in the world. I don't think I'm going to be a teaching professor. I don't think I'm going to be in a history book for that. I'm not going to win a Pulitzer Prize. That's the writing one, right? Whatever. Like, I'm not the best at it, but I'm pretty good. And there's not a lot of interior designers who are also really good at storytelling. And there's not a lot of storytellers who are also really good at interior design. And I think if you can find like these two disparate skills that you're pretty good at both and find the way to combine them, that's usually when it makes something take off. I also think about like Anthony Bourdain. Anthony Bourdain writes super talented writer, super talented chef, super talented TV host. Not the most iconic at any one of those, though. I mean, I think he's iconic, but like, no, I don't think anyone's saying he is the world's greatest chef. He is a very talented chef, it seems. I never ate his food. I'm just talking about what's out there in the books. I don't know. He worked at, very well-reputed restaurants, and he obviously gained a lot of skill and talent. But no one's saying he's like the best chef that ever lived. That's not the thing. And as far as writing, like I read his books. He's a great writer. He's super talented. He's also not Hemingway. But the fact that he could meld writing with his culinary talent and skill and humor and storytelling and this like philosophizing, these were several talents that he was like notably talented at each of these, not the best in his field, but the fact that he could combine them was so much more potent than just being the best at one of them. I think that's so much more potent. So I don't know. If you can think about like two strong talents you have, specifically ones that are not usually combined, and figure out a way to combine them, I think that is like, it's dynamite. It's like, I don't know, crack or something, and it just makes everything go so much faster. I think it really accelerates what you can do. Hot tip from me. Find your crack recipe. So to return to this career trajectory, in summary, I had my acting career. Depending on how you evaluate it, you could say, I was very serious about it from the age of 11. I was still a child and still in school. But from 11 to 28, it was a extremely serious pursuit, full-time pursuit. And I include that to say, like, it is something I was very serious about. I had an amazing work ethic, a better work ethic than I do now. And it did not work out for me. And I include this to say, like, this is not coming from somebody who like tried one thing and they got really lucky. I feel like I've had to reinvent a lot. And I think one of the greatest skills you can hone is resourcefulness and resilience. So I think I've gotten pretty good at like rebuilding, but that does also come with like a mourning period. I had like a 4-year mourning period in there, which sounds very short when I just tell this quick little podcast, but it was a real and devastating, depressing time where I thought, there can't be anything more for me. So if you're in that period, it's just a period. Feel it out. There's more for you. I promise. After acting, I hit burnout. After that, I went into coding, needed some stability, time to find a new passion. And then about 3-ish years into my tech career, COVID hit, and I was watching a lot of DIY interior design YouTube. I had a lot of time on my hand, and I was watching these videos and thinking, I feel like I could do this. Like, I was a performer. I think I'm entertaining. I love DIY design. I'm doing this in my home anyway. Like, I should just be filming it. I think I could do this. And it was a scary idea to me still. I had to sit on the idea for like a year before I was determined enough to act on it. And I think it was also constructive to sit on it for a year to make sure that that thing did not lose its shine. I stayed excited by the idea after a year. I'm not saying you need to sit on your idea for a year. I was also I was afraid, but it was helpful to know like this idea is still really energizing to me a year later. Okay, let's do it. And I started putting out like one YouTube video. It was like every 6 weeks. So I was doing these massive room makeovers. It took me so long to do and so long to film, and I didn't have a good workflow or process. It was super inefficient. And that was the fastest I could put out a video or like do a makeover, do the editing, put out a video, and work my full-time tech job. It was like one video every 6 weeks. And I did that. Maybe I did 8 videos, like 8, 9, 10 months of that. And this was a period where it kind of helped me test and confirm or not whether I enjoyed doing the work. And I put like all of my free time into it, working my full-time tech job and doing these videos in every spare moment I had, working late at nights, working on the weekends, and seeing like, does this remain fun? Because that's most likely what will happen for any business if you go out on your own or want to start a passion career, is that you are going to be trading your 40-hour work week for an 80-hour work week. This is a saying. I'm not making this up, but they say, you know, when you go into like self-employment, you essentially trade a 40-hour work week for the freedom of an 80-hour work week. You end up working so much more, especially at the beginning, but hopefully it still feels so worth it to you. And that's what I wanted to test. I was working so much more. I had a tight, strict schedule, even though I could only get a video out every 6 weeks, but I wanted to test if it stayed interesting and fun and worthwhile to me. And I was still super stressed, and I still got fed up with it sometimes at 2 a.m. And I still like, you know, felt like a failure sometimes. But that interest and that energy, it did remain. It did remain on some level, and I wanted to keep it up. So that was kind of like a testing period to test, you know, how deep does this passion go? And can it turn into something that I enjoy when it's more disciplined? After putting out a number of these videos, I felt pretty confident, like, I like working hard at this. I like this even when it's not just a hobby that I do when I'm bored. I like this even when I have to break my back at 2 a.m. Like, overall, it's still worth it to me. Even when I'm sometimes cursing at the amount of work I just signed myself onto, I still like it at the end of the day. So at this point, I was kind of hoping to be able to quit my tech job and maybe start an interior design business, like a boutique, interior decorating boutique business or so. And I got in touch with a woman who ran her own boutique interior design business. And I knew that she had transitioned from a corporate career, I think in marketing, corporate career, to doing her interior design business. I found her on Instagram. She was local to my area at the time. And she openly spoke about how she did that transition, the sacrifices she made. And I just loved how she spoke about it, how she thought about it. I thought she was both a talented designer and a really smart person. She also had 4 children at the time, and she made this happen. So like, you know, no excuses. If you are miserable in your 9 to 5 and you have found the thing you want to work towards, find a way, find a supportive partner, find the night school, find the way to make it work. If you are determined to make it work, you can. If those sacrifices aren't worth it to you and you're like, it's actually okay in the 9 to 5, that's also amazing. Like, there's no one right answer. There is no hierarchy of what's the correct thing to do here. But if you want to make it work, you can. And I got in touch with this woman. Her name was Emily May. For everyone who likes interior designers, I've talked about her a ton on my YouTube channel. Her Instagram is House, Haus, like the German House by Emily May. She's a great designer based out of Kentucky, I believe. And I think I emailed her and just, you know, complimented her, said how much I loved her work. I'm also trying to make the transition from my office job. I love how she spoke about it. Do you have even 20 minutes for a phone call? I would love to pick your brain. So reaching out to somebody, it was a cold email, but I had a very bite-sized ask. Like, when you're asking someone to just like give to you for free, please make it bite-sized. Please be cognizant of like, you're just asking for a handout here. And I think she was super sweet. We did, you know, a 20-minute call that probably turned into like an hour-long call or so. And that was, I can't recommend that enough to anyone listening to this. Like, get in touch with someone in that field who, for some reason, you think has good advice, whether it's advice on the transition, advice on what the business is like, advice on the day-to-day, whatever it is. Collect that information. That's the research you need to do. And she's become a bit of a mentor You know, she definitely was a mentor to me in some ways, but this person doesn't have to be your full-time mentor or anything. It might just be one really helpful conversation where you collect information. Listen, I think there's some things in life that it's okay to take a risk on. It's okay for it to be a total crapshoot. Like, sure, I'll try whatever new trendy milk people are doing now. I'll try bean milk once. Or, you know, I'll see if I'm hotter with like distinguished glasses. Maybe I'll be cuter that way. I don't know. There's not a lot writing on it. I'll try it. Some things that you shouldn't take a risk on. Dating a man named Cecil. Or what doctor you're going to see. Finding the right doctor should not be a total crapshoot. And with ZocDoc, it's not, because you've got more options than you know. When you use ZocDoc, you can search specifically by a doctor's specialty, who takes your insurance, how many miles away they are from you, who's available this Tuesday at 2:35, or even a next day appointment. You can get as specific as possible and find a doctor that meets your needs. I use ZocDoc. I have for, I feel like, a decade, and you should too. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high quality in-network doctors to choose the one that you need. You can instantly book an appointment as early as like the next day. I've gotten appointments sometimes. These are all in-network appointments. There's more than 100,000 healthcare providers for every specialty, from mental health to dental health, eye care, skin care, all of the cares. Give yourself some care. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance, who are located nearby, who have a good fit for your medical needs, and who are highly rated and verified by patients. They share ratings and reviews all up and down that ZocDoc. When you click on a doctor, you can look at their calendar and see their actual appointment openings, choose a time that works for you, and click to instantly book it. Plus, ZocDoc appointments happen fast, typically within 24 hours to 72 hours of booking. You can even have a same day appointment. It's magic. It's the internet. It's time for this, okay? If you're not using ZocDoc, I don't know what you're doing, baby girl. So stop putting off that medical thing you've been avoiding, that doctor's appointment you've been avoiding, and go to ZocDoc.com/notforeveryone. Find and instantly book a top-rated doctor. That's ZocDoc.com/notforeveryone, all one word. Make sure to use our link so that they know we sent you, because we love them and they love us. And go get your medical care. Thank you to ZocDoc for sponsoring. And she talked to me about all the things she wanted lined up before she quit her office job. And to her, it was like a certain amount of money in her savings, a certain amount of clients coming in every month, a certain amount of finished projects. She wanted to have like health insurance set up for herself. Remember, if you're going from a salaried position with benefits to your self-employed side hustle, you're probably going to lose benefits. You're going to have to pay for health insurance if you're in America. That's our life. You might have to pay very different taxes. So all the like financial and logistical benchmarks that were important to her, and that's different for everybody. That's going to be different. But if you can find somebody who's maybe made the transition you want to make and talk to them about like what were the benchmarks that were important to them, because it's going to be specific to the industry, specific to the career. But I thought she was just super smart. It was so helpful. And following that talk, I think a few months later, I made a decision to go to my tech boss and ask them if I could cut down to 30 hours of work per week. That's not going to be possible everywhere, but if you're determined to make this transition, find somewhere it's possible. 30 hours a week in America, according to the Affordable Care Act, you are required by law to receive health insurance. 30 hours a week minimum, you have to have health insurance. So I was like, I will do 30 hours a week and no more, and I will maintain my health insurance. And I was working for an agency that was really wonderful, so supportive. They supported a lot of people who had like creative outside jobs, and they made it work. And in addition to doing 30 hours a week, I asked if I could squish those 30 hours into 3 10-hour days, and they allowed me to. So instead of working 5 days, 8 hours, or even 4 days, 8 hours, or whatever the math would be, I only had 3 days of work. And the rest of the 4 days of the week, I was going to spend on my YouTube or interior design, whatever. Obviously, those specifics aren't going to work everywhere, but the point basically is like, is there a way you can make it like an incremental step away from your office job? Might not be possible. For plenty of people, it might not be possible. But if there's a way to go part-time or to cut down on some hours or condense your hours into longer days, go for it if it works for you. And, I made sure to to like do right by my promise to work a 10-hour day, but it was life-changing. And then once I cut down to my 30 hours a week in the tech job, I hauled ass for about a year. I hauled ass working 30 hours a week for my tech job and 50 to 60 hours a week on YouTube videos and interior design projects. I was doing all three of those for a while, taking interior design clients that had nothing to do with YouTube, working on spaces, making YouTube videos, filming, editing with the like least efficient workflow process ever because I was new to it, and doing my 30 hours a week in the tech job. I was working 80 to 90-hour weeks regularly, almost every week. I was not seeing family and friends a lot. I was extremely stressed out. I was extremely underslept. I worked till 2, 4 in the morning most nights of the week. And it was nonstop. And it was a haul. I hauled ass, and that was for about a year until I was able and confident to quit my tech job, my day job. But that too felt worthwhile. That semi-horrific period felt like an investment. It was an investment. It was also another period of testing out, do I like this passion when I take it to the next level, when I'm working 2 a.m. every night? Do I still want to do this? Is this still worth it? And as brutal as it truly was, it was still worth it to me. It was not fun all the time. I mostly was not happy. I put out a lot of depressing videos in that time because I was depressed and I was lonely and I had no connection to people, but it was still worth it to me. There was still something really, there was momentum to it and energy, and I was doing something new and creative, and there just felt like so much possibility there. It was still worth it to me, but I needed to have really a deadline. Like I needed to limit how long I was willing to kind of deteriorate myself in that way. And I think there's a spectrum to this. Everyone talks about work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance, la, 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 setting boundaries, la, la, la. But there's also a huge value to like being willing to be uncomfortable. Discomfort as a strategic investment. And this applies to lots of things. I think it applies to relationships sometimes. I think it applies to hobbies and passion and businesses sometimes. I think it applies to personal growth. Discomfort as a strategic investment. And of course, you can take this to an extreme where it's damaging to you. But the complete lack of discomfort, having no willingness to ever be uncomfortable, that will also do a lot of damage to your life. And I've heard a lot of therapists kind of bemoan the attitude in the zeitgeist today where like it's all about boundaries and I can never be uncomfortable, and like, well, that gives me anxiety, and like, well, that's not work-life balance, and this and like all of those kind of hot phrases and hot words, they're all values of mine, but there's a spectrum for each of them. And there is I think there can be a little bit of a feeling in our culture today that like, well, I should never have to be overstretched. I should never have to be uncomfortable. I should never have to tolerate people I don't want to tolerate. I should never, but that's not really life. Like, that will cut a lot of wonderful, beautiful, fulfilling things out of your life. If you are of the mind that as soon as your marriage becomes a little uncomfortable or unpleasant and it's not a high every day, as soon as that happens, you're going to leave it. Okay. But you also might miss out on the benefits you get to reap by sitting through a year or two of, kind of doldrums and then seeing what's on the other side of that. long-term relationship. This is not specific advice for any single marriage. I don't know anything about marriage, but I just know about relationships and how they ebb and flow. And if you talk to anyone who's been married for a long time, they say, expect that you will go through sometimes years of a marriage where you don't necessarily feel like you're in love with them. I've heard that from so many people in beautiful relationships that have lasted decades. And I think there's something to that staying power. I think that's true for pursuing a hobby, pursuing a passion, for pursuing friendships, for pursuing, the difficulty of your own personal growth and development. There's just periods where it feels like I'm not getting anything from this. Like nothing's growing. I'm just planting seeds and planting seeds and planting seeds and like, what's coming back to me? And I do think that there is a value to finding the balance of discomfort. Discomfort as a value in some times. Again, it's a spectrum. And I think one of my talents is actually a willingness to endure discomfort. I know that I do it to a dangerous degree. I'll never forget the day I drove home 10 hours cross country after my relationship of 6 years deteriorated, a relationship that my family and friends witnessed for years as being really destructive and tricky and just not a great one. And I showed up on my parents' doorstep and my mom looked at me and said, Caroline, you endure to a fault. Like it's a fault. And I think she referenced my eating disorder. She referenced my acting career. She referenced my relationship. I don't know how fair all of those evaluations are, but it is true. Like I am very good at enduring unpleasant times and I will stick with them to a fault. I've met, I think, a lot of people who had abuse in childhood come away with that quality because childhood it's that one time where you don't get to set a boundary. You don't get to say, this doesn't work for me all the time. Like you might just be stuck. And so you learn to make it work. And that is all at once like a skill I have, I think. And it benefits me in a lot of ways. And when taken to an extreme, it can be very damaging. I don't think it's good or bad. I think it's a skill that you can use for good or you can use for bad. And I think I've done a lot of work to tone down my willingness to endure discomfort. But 2% of that skill is really important and really helpful. And I think if you don't have like 2% of that willingness to endure discomfort, then you miss out on a lot of really beautiful things in life. So there was this period for about a year where I was busting ass and it was pretty tough and I was crying a lot and I wasn't seeing anyone. And I knew why I was doing it. I was doing it for a reason and I knew there was going to be an intentional end point. And I thought of it as like discomfort as an investment. It was a strategic investment. I wasn't going to do it forever. I was not going to do what I did when I was younger in acting, but it's different when there's like still some fulfillment mixed in, something that energizes you mixed in. Whereas with acting, I was just like, I hate every single day, but maybe it'll be worth it in 10 years when I'm this big, great actor. That was a very different thing. However, now I'm very comfortable working hard and making sacrifices, but there needs to be enough mixed in to sustain me now. But to me, if there's enough fulfillment mixed in on the path to trying to build that business, if there's enough like daily or at least weekly fulfillment coming in on the path to hoping this thing will result in a successful business, then that's enough for me to try. Then after this year-long period, I was making videos, I was taking interior design clients, I was working the tech job. I reached a point where the money I was making from my side gigs was almost what I was making from my tech salary. Not quite. And I would need to make a little bit more to get like health insurance and whatever. But it was enough that I was comfortable quitting my tech job. And I figured that would light enough of a fire under my butt to go and get extra gigs to kind of bridge the gap. So if you're trying to figure out like when is the right time, like I know I want to pursue this creative thing full time, but when is the right time to quit my day job. There's a bunch of different ways you can measure it, and it really will be different person to person. But I think one really good measure is when you notice that you are missing out on opportunities, a lot of opportunities, because of your day job. Like, there was only so many design clients I could take because of the day job. There was only so many videos I could make because of the day job. And, you know, theoretically, years earlier, there was also a limit to how much I could do because of the day job, but the client demand wasn't there. The YouTube skill wasn't there yet. The workflow process wasn't there. So if you find that like you have so much clients coming in or demand or job offers coming in that you're like having to turn down all the time because of your day job, then that could be a point to start considering like, you know, there's stuff lined up here. And I do think there is, as scary as it is to like cut the cord with your day job at a certain point, I do think it's really important because yes, it lights that fire under your butt. And there is something to like no longer having a safety net. There is something to not being able to turn back. You know, it is hard to fully go in on something when in the back of your mind, you always know like you have this exit, you have this out. So I think there is something to like sealing up that exit strategically at the right point so that you know you will get creative, you will bust ass, you will get resourceful, you will be resilient at the right time. I think it is important to cut those losses and make sure you go all in. And this is the reason why I do not envy trust fund kids. And if you're somebody listening to this and you say, oh, I could do XYZ if only I had a trust fund like these other Richie Riches and these Nepo babies and whatever, let me change your thinking about that right now. I absolutely do not envy trust fund kids. As a creative person who finds fulfillment from doing something new, something innovative, creating something, building something, having a trust fund will almost certainly stand in your way. And, you know, trust fund, you know, huge inheritance, whatever it is. If you're spending time, like wasting time envying those people and thinking the fact that you're not independently wealthy, that's the thing that's keeping you from pursuing your dreams, it certainly isn't. In fact, I think it's the thing that usually keeps those people from pursuing a passion. Because if you're looking to do something creative, something innovative, something new and different, no matter how much money you have behind you, you are always going to hit parts in the road where you have to basically eat shit for a while. Even if you're like a millionaire, you get to a certain level with your business or your startup where the competition is high and Uber is trying to beat out Lyft or whatever. And like there are periods where you're going to have to eat shit no matter how much money you have behind you. You are going to be sleeping in the office. You are going to be grinding in a way that is unpleasant. You're going to be wishing you could sell that whole business away and just go back to your comfy 9-to-5 job. And for people who have some kind of trust fund beneath them, they will never do that hard period. They just won't. And I'm not saying this to like shit on exorbitantly wealthy people. I'm saying it based on what I've witnessed. You know, even just anecdotally, I remember there was a girl I grew up with who, lovely person, so funny, so creative, so artistic, so talented, such a joy to be around, beautiful, amazing person, also had a trust fund. And as we grew up, I watched this extremely talented person who kind of like dabbled in a bunch of different creative pursuits and definitely wanted to have a creative career of their own. I watched as like their friends, their family members, various people around them all started to build these creative careers. And this person could not, but they had all the talent. They had like more talent than most people I know. And I truly think it is because they always had an out. And no matter what creative or innovative thing you pursue, it's going to get really hard and really unpleasant and really nasty. And if you can always just escape to your house, you know, on the coast instead and take a couple weeks off, you're not going to see that thing through. And I saw this friend like get really frustrated through the years and get really jealous of friends of theirs who came up from more meager means and like made a creative career happen. And I just saw their own frustration, and they're just an incredibly talented, amazing person. And I think the thing stopping them, like I'm just observing, so I guess I could be wrong, but like I think the thing stopping them is that there's no reason they would ever go through something really hard. Why would they? I don't think that I would. I'm not different because I'm not different in that way. Like I also don't want to go through super hard times, but I have decided to do it because I didn't have other options and I wanted to create a better life for me. But if you already have a great life, if you already have an amazing life, it's really hard to decide to put your head down just in the pursuit of purpose, just in the pursuit of passion or fulfillment. When you have all the other superficial things, I think it really gets in your way. So if you're sitting there thinking like, oh, I could do all these things if only I had all this money behind me, I just think that's a falsehood. I think that it actually hurts you. I think that like the drive and the determination and the lack of a safety net, those things are all connected. For what it's worth, I think at a certain point, it is important to cut the cord, important to lose the safety net at the right time for you based on your savings, your calculations, your income needs, your family needs, your health insurance needs, your client needs, whatever. At a certain point, it is time to cut the cord and go all in. If you've proven to yourself that you can light a fire under your own butt, you can be disciplined, you can, put your head to the grindstone, like, whatever, and make it work. So today, I am working full-time in YouTube, making YouTube videos. I do a lot of interior design related content in my YouTube videos, but I don't take on clients anymore. I don't take on design clients outside of YouTube because I also tested that out for a while. I don't remember exactly when I kind of nixed that career path, but I love interior design. So I thought, I should be taking on clients. And I learned I really don't like client work. I really don't. There's a bunch of reasons. But for the most part, it's not how I want to spend my energy. Interior design, the traditional route with client work, ends up being a lot of just logistical management, tracking shipments, calling customer support, scheduling, marriage counseling for couples who can't decide how to arrange their space, debating, arguing with people, like why they should, care about the recommendation that they've hired you and paid you to give them. Like, it was just a lot of different dynamics that got so far away from creative interior design and the things that I loved that I was just like, I don't want to do that. I don't like that. And thankfully, in today's modern world, there's a bunch of other ways to pursue some of these creative arts without the traditional businesses. But yeah, I guess I just wanted to throw that in there somewhere. I was like, I don't love working with clients, but I kind of like teaching. I like teaching on YouTube. I like teaching to an audience. I like explaining. I like trying to figure out a way to explain things that maybe, concepts that a lot of people know and hold true, but they haven't quite explained for themselves why it's true. I love doing like resourceful home design with limited spaces and restrictions and tight budgets. I love that. I don't know if I'm as good with, a space where there's $1 million budget. Like, I don't know. Sometimes it's hard to be resourceful and creative with like more money thrown at you. I think more creativity comes with less money and more restrictions. So I kind of actually do enjoy that more. And I like performing, obviously. So YouTube ends up kind of being the sweet spot. And that's more or less where I am today. It is still a job. I as much as I love performing, I kind of hate filming. I don't know why. Like I dread filming almost every time I do it. And I usually still end up having fun, but I love a lot of parts of editing, but I also dread a lot of it. I love a lot of parts of writing, scripting. I dread a lot of it. There's almost every aspect of the work I both can enjoy and can absolutely dread. I think a lot of the dread of filming comes from like, I don't want to be performative. I want my energy to be honest, but sometimes my honest energy is the worst. Like, I'm a hater. People don't always want to watch that. So I'm like waiting to find when the energy is right, or like, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's uninteresting. But my point is, it's still a job and I still have to be disciplined about it. And I think one of the things I've learned, at least, being self-employed and running my own business, is that for the most part, I need to force myself to work 5 days a week, no matter what. That's a minimum. And even if there's a lighter week, some days I work 6 days a week, some days it's 7. Rarely these days is it 7. But I will have weeks now, like I have a very good work-life balance now, and I will have weeks where I'm like, I could work 3 days if I wanted. It's not every week, but like there's definitely weeks where if I wanted to, I could only work 3 days. Or I think I could only work 3 days. But I found that like anytime I think I could work less than 5 days, I'm wrong, actually. There's something down the line I could be preparing for. There's something I could be polishing up. There's something I could be anticipating or scheduling or planning. And basically my rule right now, where I am in my work, self-employed business, like my schedule could be anything. I try to make myself fill up 5 days a week. Find something to do. Find something to script. Find something to plan. You can work at a slower pace, but like do something is a rule I've come up with for myself. And there is one other little ditty I want to share related to like work and passions and following your energy. That our editor, Abby, suggested I share in this episode. I was talking to her about, what should I share in this episode? And she was like, oh, I think you should talk about your recent sponsor ad that you did on YouTube. And what she's referencing is an ad I did for a sponsor in one of my recent YouTube videos. And the sponsor was Bombas Socks. They make super nice, high quality socks, and they donate a ton to charity. And it's just like a great company, great socks, blah, blah, blah. We love Bombas. This is not an ad. But I did agree to do a paid sponsorship for them. And recently, maybe a couple months ago, I had this like change of heart about how I approached ads in my videos. Because honestly, like, I don't like filming ads. I don't like selling things. That's why I like didn't want to do interior design for clients. I don't like selling people on things. I don't like it. I don't like to do it. And even when I genuinely like the brand or genuinely like the product, filming the ad, it interrupts my flow. It interrupts the plot of the video I had planned for that day. It interrupts the makeover I was doing. Like, I never want to film the ad in that moment. It always feels annoying to me, no matter who the sponsor is. It's just that it's become that part of my work that I kind of dread executing. It's become that obligatory part. Any job you ever have, there's going to be parts you don't like. Every single job. And that's a part that I'd begun to dread. And a couple months ago, for some reason, I like decided intentionally to make a switch. And I was like, I am going to stop skimping on these ads. I'm just reading them and kind of throwing them away and trying to get through them as quickly as possible, which was also for the viewers. Like, I just wanted to skid through them as quickly as possible and get them done with for the viewers too. But a couple months ago, I was like, I need to put more energy into this. I need to put more work into them. I want to make them fun. I want to make them memorable. I want to make them entertaining. And, theoretically, maybe I will benefit from that. Like, maybe I'll see returns on that. Maybe that will make people like the brand and buy the brand more, but not necessarily. Just because the ad is entertaining and just because people like the entertainment value of it does not mean they're going to buy more of that product. And frankly, that's the only thing the brand cares about. Like, if I make a really funny ad for Bombas socks, but they don't sell more socks from that, more people don't click the link, Bombas doesn't really care. They'll be like, nice, thanks. But like, they don't really care. They're a company, and like all companies, they want to sell stuff. And so I was like, I don't really know if putting more energy and creative effort and time, like hours, many more hours like at least 5 to 6 more hours of editing time, 4 at least more hours of filming, planning, etc. Many more hours, like at least a day or 2 of additional work for 1 week of a video. I don't know if that'll pay off for me, but it just felt correct. It was one of those things where, like, on paper, I cannot make the case for this. I do not know what the returns will be. And actually, there might not be a good, like, return on paper. I cannot make the case for this on paper, but energetically, something about it felt correct. Something about it felt at least worth trying. And worst case scenario, I'm going to go really hard on this ad for these socks. I'm going to make it fun. Worst case scenario, I had fun doing a part of my job that otherwise feels obligatory. Worst case scenario, you did something fun. And what's really great about this story, and the reason Abby wanted me to share it, was because I ended up writing like a little jingle for this ad and doing a silly dance and just like making it silly. And people loved the ad so much that every single comment on my YouTube video was about the ad, like almost every single comment. And people were commenting that they went back and replayed the ad, the advertisement of the video they were replaying and replaying. And they were replaying it so much that it made this video like go viral, a smaller degree of viral, but it got, 5 times as many views as my other videos get in a few days. And that was amazing, of course. And that doesn't happen every time that you invest creatively and energetically in something. It doesn't always pay you back. I'm not going to say like you always get rewarded. I'd done that before for many other ads and the video didn't go viral. But it was a really nice moment of being like, honestly, I don't know how I'm going to be rewarded for this extra creative work, but something about it feels correct and it feels fun and it just feels correct. And I really couldn't justify it to anyone beforehand. I can't justify starting this business to anyone beforehand, but something in me just knows it's the correct business for me to start. I can't justify quitting XYZ job right now. Everybody else around me is going to freak out, but something in me knows I can make something of this. I can make it work. That was true of me when I started YouTube too. I did not tell anybody that I intended, when I made my first YouTube video, I didn't tell anyone I intended to go full-time into YouTube. But by the time I made my first video, I intended to be a full-time YouTuber eventually. I didn't tell anyone that because I couldn't justify it. I couldn't prove it to them. And I really didn't need to prove it to anybody. I was going to test it out and we would see. But energetically, it felt correct. It felt possible. And I've been wrong on that feeling before, but sometimes the feeling is right. And maybe it's like a giant career jump. Maybe it's a lifestyle jump. Maybe it's a relationship jump. Maybe it's a smaller micro decision within your career, within a relationship, within a friendship, within your lifestyle. Maybe it's a smaller thing, but like energetically, you've sat on it, you've thought about it, you've done the calculations, and you've also decided the calculations just don't matter here. Sometimes there is this energetic thing, and I'm not the most like woo-woo person on earth. I'm pretty conservative with risk. I like to do a lot of vetting. I like to live conservatively. But I also do believe in like paying attention to that energy, watching that energy over time, seeing if it maintains over time, seeing if it can be paired with discipline, seeing if there's something unique and innovative in your vision that you can see that maybe no one else can see yet. I'm a pretty good cook and a pretty funny writer. Who gives a shit? Well, I'm Anthony Bourdain. Okay? Like, why do those skills need to go together? I don't know, but I think that they do. And there's a lot of experimentation that needs to happen along the way and a lot of ups and downs. If you're looking to start your own creative pursuit, I really recommend, actually to any human being, creative pursuit or not, listening to the podcast, How I Built This. It's probably changed my life listening to that podcast. It's all stories of different founders of different, giant companies and all the ups and downs, all the failed businesses before they founded this one. And even once they founded this one, all the failures they had along the way, all the fighting they had to do, all the times they almost got voted off the board or lost all of their Series A funding or like, I don't know what happens. I don't know about money. But no matter like the successes you have, there will also be hard times. There will also be the times you have to like really grind and be willing to sit in discomfort as an investment in what it's going to gain you possibly on the other end. And I don't know. There's a lot of planning to be done, but ultimately I do think there's something to paying attention to that energy in you. Watch the energy, trust your vision, pair that with vetting, pair that with talking to people smarter than you, more experienced than you, finding mentors, sending that cold email, asking for 20 minutes. Like that's the research you can do. Talk to an accountant, figure out what finances you need to be okay, have the discussion with your partner, talk to your employer about how you can cut down, how you can condense your hours, what you can do to adjust. Maybe you you take every other Friday off and you condensed your hours in between. I've heard more and more people come up with creative solutions with their employers. So do the research, talk to people smarter than you, figure out what you don't know, but don't forget to listen to that energy. I believe in you. I hope this was inspiring to everybody, even those not looking to start their own business. If there's someone you're thinking of who is struggling to discern, figure out where they are on the path right now, trying to figure it out, trying to place it all together, I hope that this is a helpful episode for them. If you're new to the podcast, this is not for everyone. What do we talk about? Relationships, love, self-growth, career, friendships, all the stuff, all the human stuff. It's not all about fulfillment and it's not all about like career fulfillment, but life fulfillment. How you can get fulfillment in all these different areas of your life. It's a balancing act. Anyway, I'm pretty tired and I have to run. Ugh, and I have cramps. Ugh, I have cramps too. What a life. But I'm happy to be alive. See you next week.